did hold on as Njigba had a drop on him, and that is going to score 2, and the Mud Hens tie the game. And now the ball gets away from the home plate area, and on to third base goes Malloy.
Hey, everybody. It's Rogelio here for the Tiger Minor Report for Week 9 recap. Chris should be with me momentarily as we're sitting in on a very cool evening after a hot weekend around the Motor City, where it was Friday. I think it was like 95 degrees. And so wherever you are, hopefully you are having a good evening. Blood Right, thank you.
Exquisite. That ball is gone. Such a all-time.
So, yeah, I'm doing pretty well, Alex. Thank you for joining us on the usual Blood Right as well. I just got back from bowling, and our team won the second game, and I bowled my average, so that's all that matters. And there's Chris with me right here. But, and then, what was it? Hit the batting cages earlier. Was it Thursday at softball? It was a very active weekend, and got to see quite a bit of baseball today, watched the entire Erie SeaWolves game. Between that and the Tigers, whatever that was. So, yeah, I had to split TV. And so so in my office, I have a TV over here, and then I have a second monitor over here. So it's a whole station of baseball. So stuck to that this weekend, and good to see you again here, Stan, as well. Chris, how's your evening going?
Good. Yeah. We had a lot of traffic at the pool this weekend, Friday and Saturday. Lots of kids playing weird games that I don't know, but somehow they all know.
That the classic case of 500, like you just tossed it.
No, they were playing this weird. It's almost like eeny, meeny, miny, mo, but like for fun. Like they just keep doing that until there's only 2 kids left, and I don't know. It's like I don't know, but went and saw the new Spider-Man movie today with Harrison. That was awesome. So yeah, other than that, lots of baseball too.
What's not awesome was Toledo this week, by the way, who, just for a fun fact, were outscored 54-18. That's right. I said that correctly. Toledo was outscored this week against the Indianapolis Indians 54-18. And during that stretch, they were shut out twice, and they scored 12-6. They lost the first 2 games. They gave up 25 runs. Third game, they won 4-1. Got shut out 11-0. Won 10-7, but the game was actually really much in hand when Erie had 2 back-to-back home runs and 9th on Friday. That was yesterday. And today they got shut out 7-0 by a pitcher that we had no idea the Tigers signed.
Oh yeah, the Brian Sampson, or what was his name?
Sampson.
Yeah, they're scrambling. They're scrambling to find bodies right now. A kid from Indy ball, you said, wasn't even like 28.
Yeah, he was another Indy ball signing because the Tigers had another one, didn't they? A few weeks back.
I don't even remember. Let's see, what's his name? Yeah, I didn't even have the name.
By the way, the Guardians put Plesac designated for assignment. By the way.
Yeah, I saw that. It's he's got a 7.5 ERA in the AAA this year. He got a 7.5 ERA in the majors. But with how injured the Tigers are, they may just want a warm body. Honestly, it's tough now. They put brought up Olsen. He did better than I think just about anybody could have hoped for. Certainly better than I had predicted. I feel bad about that, but good on the kid, because I didn't mean to be mean to him. I just thought, see guys make their major league debut and usually they're nervous and they don't pitch well. And he was just as cool as ice. But Yeah, and then Fido went down, right? So that we have no idea who they're going to start.
So Garrett Hill did get the call up.
Yeah.
So Hill probably will get the ball on Tuesday, which is kind of, he hasn't been pitching. I mean, the velocity has been there in Toledo. It's not that it's just the command is still off. And Stan emailed me about, if he was wondering if some of us Toledo. And at first I just thought of like, it wasn't, Stan, I really thought that because based off how Toledo's been doing their rotation this year, kind of like bullpen arms and just seeing what they have. At first I just thought, well, maybe it's just the way they're putting it out there. But since like the beginning of May, it's just been in terms of a offensive standpoint too, the bats have not been there. I mean, Parker Meadows has been the most consistent bat they have had in terms of he's batting at least 280 per week, where Malloy has kind of fallen back behind the pack. We'll get to the numbers here shortly as well. But another thing to look forward to for tonight, Erie quality starts. They have 5 quality starts this week. Yeah, that's right. 5 quality starts. Well, no, it's actually was 4, right? Because today they didn't really count the Flores and go 5 innings, right?
Yeah, well, they had Flores went 5 and 4.
Right.
He was pitching twice this week. And Madden went 5 or 6, but it wasn't a quality start because
right.
He gave up 5 runs. But yeah, they pitched. The Tigers took off the reins on the starting pitchers over the last week. Started letting guys go 6 innings, and basically everybody in Erie did it except for Flores. And that was because he was pitching twice. But we saw a bunch of guys, a couple guys do that in West Michigan as well. So finally getting some more length out of the starting rotations, and maybe that'll help. But in Toledo, they don't really even have the guys to do it. I don't know how many guys in that rotation have even gone 4+ innings this year. This week, the longest start this week was from Jack O'Loughlin, who just came up from high A. He gave him 4 1/3. Nobody else could do that or do more than that. So, yeah, they need some bodies in Toledo. I don't know. It just feels like something's up. Something's wrong there in Toledo. Like they went 6 and 20 in May, and they're 1 and 5 in this series. They were like 8-10 games above 500, right?
Yeah.
And then it just the wheels fell off in May, and I don't know. We haven't been down there in the locker room. I don't know if we would be able to figure out anything anyway, but we haven't talked to Anthony Iapoce, so I don't know if there's something going on with the mood there or if it's just a lack of talent. But yeah, you touched on it. Like the offense hasn't been there, and the pitching's been basically awful for 6 weeks.
Yeah, and the thing is too is that even with Malloy, you see kind of some sort of regression a little bit because teams have figured him out, and he hasn't been able to adjust as of yet. I mean, he probably will adjust at some point. I'm not say never say never, but it has been the case of where he has more walks and strikeouts, and this is a guy that takes pride on walking a lot, and it has not been there at all. And so, just looking at it, I mean, in even limited duty. Donnie Sands is the one that's been hitting a little bit in terms of when you look at some of the exit velocity numbers, which getting slightly better, but still, I mean, it's one of those things where I'm trying not to get in terms of depth. Like they're talking about this great, and I was talking to somebody about this today, about this great quote unquote depth the Tigers have as far as pitching goes. There we go. There is a slide for today. And I just been able to see it. If they got Hill going, I mean, you could see that a little bit. But yeah, in terms of what Parker Meadows has been able to do consistently over the last 2 weeks, it's saying that to me that's a good sign. The rest of it, though, based off what we hear and everything, there's gonna be a couple changes in Toledo coming up. I'm not gonna go. What they call in the biz a tease, but there's gonna be certain things developing based off what happens in the next few weeks over in Erie. And yes, Jonathan, to answer Harrison's question, yes, Jonathan Davis was traded for Brady. Is it Brady Smith or one of his?
Brady Allen.
Brady Allen. Okay. So if I think of the Flash, Barry Allen, Brady Allen. Okay. Sorry.
Fair enough. Okay.
All right. So my DC comic thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Mud Hens could not, in terms of even bullpen wise. I was looking through. I was trying to find something to put on there, and I couldn't find anything that was just look at the starting numbers you mentioned, Chris. It was bad.
Yeah, they couldn't keep other teams from scoring runs, and they couldn't score any runs. It was really frustrating. Brendan White had a nice week. after he had a really rough month of May with some of the worst BABIP you've ever seen. It was he I think pitched 13, 14 innings and had like 25 strikeouts, but also gave up 29 hits. One of the damnedest things I've ever seen. And then, Eddie, I think, responded to you with an interesting point about maybe some of it has to do with just a whole bunch of guys playing out of position on defense. And that'll put your BABIP up when balls in play don't get converted into outs. But yeah, Brendan White pitched okay, but other than that, yeah, like it's tough to find anything to really hang your hat on from the. So I've got starters gave up 27 runs, 22 earned in 19.2 innings last week. So an ERA over 9. They've got a 6.49 ERA as an entire staff over the last month. And over the last 2 weeks, it's 6.83, which is like, you're talking 96 Tigers territory, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the worst pitching you've ever seen. So I don't know. I don't know what they do to fix it. I mean, I do know what they do to fix it. There's a whole mess of arms in Erie, but we're going to hold off for another couple of weeks because, playoffs and such. And the Mud Hens, I believe, are like 8 or 9 games out of their playoff hunt. In Erie, I think, is a game up on Altoona right now. So
that's correct. Yep.
So, yeah, but on offense, Meadows, he's just chugging along. It just hasn't been nearly as exciting as it was last year. He's been like a steady 80 to 90 WRC plus all season. So you're just kind of hoping that he'll get hot one of these weeks. It can pump that up, but it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world because I don't like if you were tearing it up. I guess they'd bring him up and play him, but I don't know. Like the outfield is one spot where they've been seemingly okay. Well, now that Riley Green's hurt, I guess they probably would. They wouldn't mind if Meadows were tearing it up, so they didn't have to play Tyler Nevin and stuff. But I don't know. He's been okay. Malloy has really continued his malaise. The malaise.
The malaise.
Since basically the first month of the season. Yeah, he's hitting. He's down to like 270 on the year now as a batting average, and he did hit that bomb the other night. But beyond that, it's not a whole lot of damage this week. I want to say 3 hits.
Yeah, and
4 hits, 4 for 23.
Yeah, 4 for 23. And what's even interesting is the fact that it was funny. I was thinking it was Friday, or yesterday when I posted the home run that he hit after Corey Joyce hit one. Everybody was still like, call him up. I'm like, did you not pay attention? Have you not been paying attention at all? You just see a Malloy run, like, call him up.
Yeah, well, nobody cares because of how badly the Tigers are performing. They just want to see new bodies. I don't know what you do when those new bodies come up and perform just as poorly, though, which is probably what would happen, right? So it's kind of a no-win situation there. They did, Lipsius continues to have a very bizarre season. He went, 5 for 23, no power. He's not striking out, but he's walking at a decent clip. It's just a weird season for him. And who else do we got? We have Kerry Carpenter. That's an interesting one, right? Because Kerry Carpenter, he didn't do much this week either. He played, I think, 5 games, 3 for 21, something like that. A couple walks, some strikeouts. But I don't think he's played the field yet. I think he's been DHing only. And he doesn't seem to have that pop in his bat right now. It makes me wonder, along with him playing DH, it just makes me wonder if the shoulder. I wonder if it's not necessarily like bothering him, but I wonder if it's something that can't be completely fixed without an off season of rest or surgery or something. But that's all reckless speculation, right? I don't like to do that except when we do it.
And usually we come with some sort of science behind it. Yeah, that is a little strange to see because it comes at the worst time when the Tigers need all the offense they can get. They got swept by the White Sox, and then to make matters worse, it was they lost on a grand slam today. I mean, that's the ultimate kick in the dick, isn't it? And just it's just I don't know.
Well, I mean, is that worse than losing on a walk-off wild pitch off the umpire's mask?
Well, back to back. Okay. How about this? It's back-to-back kicks to the groin area. There we go. That's the way this weekend was for the White Sox. I'm digging a couple questions in here. Elton, good to see you here live on here as well. Is Donnie Sands a replacement to Rogers or Eric Haas? No. His exit velocity is still not there. He's not. It's not that it's one of those things you look at the box score, oh, he's hitting 412, but you look at the quality of the hits, it's still below average in terms of just exit velocity, those kind of advanced numbers. So unfortunately, Harrison, I don't see that kind of coming as some sort of solution with that. And we'll get to Dingler later too, because he also had a rough week down in Erie. But it's one of those things where I think that the catching situation maybe be a little bleaker. I don't know. I don't want to say it's bleaker, but it is kind of startling a little bit. I want to say, because I feel like Chris, and this is before we get back to Toledo. Let's just think about this today. You go out, you get Sands, you get all these minor league free agents, and they've all just been plug and play. But you've seen Crouch. We've talked about Crouch this this season, and just not much else. I mean, Alfonso's not really a catcher long term. Maybe he might be a DH or first baseman type, but I don't know, man. It just seems really strange that it's just like from a year ago now to now. It just seems like the depth is kind of questionable at the moment.
Yeah, it's part of that is just like the ups and downs of being minor league prospects. But yeah, Donnie Sands, he's been hitting well lately. The last 3 or 4 weeks, he's actually been getting a lot of hits. But like Rogelio said, there's very little power there. I think he's got 1 home run. He looks like a guy who should hit for power, but his swing, for whatever, his swing seems to be tailored to making contact off the end of the bat and kind of looping balls. I don't know. He walks a little bit, doesn't strike out a ton. He's not a great defender. Like, he's an option in that he's a body on the 40-man roster in case Rogers or Haas gets hurt. But I don't think he would be an upgrade over either of those guys. It's sad as that is to say. I think Rogers hitting 160. But yeah, and then Dingler has just stagnated for about 3 seasons, and Josh Crouch couldn't hit in Double-A, had to go back down to West Michigan. Part of that was because they wanted Dingler to get everyday at bats, but part of it was because Crouch was not doing a great job catching the pitching staff there, and he also wasn't hitting. And yeah, below that, it's Mike Rothenberg is in low A, hitting well, but he's striking out a ton, and I think he's on the injured list now. They just brought up Archer Brookman, who is an unsigned free agent out of Ohio State.
Yep.
They, you got Papirski and Knapp there in Toledo, but we were talking about this earlier. Like, it wouldn't be a huge shock if the Tigers go catcher early in the draft. You don't draft for need, but if it rolls out that way, it wouldn't shock us.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting. And I'm glad you picked up on that, Chris, because that's something that I was kind of leading to, because here we are, we're hearing that the Pirates might go with Langford, and then I don't know, again, LSU pissing me off to no end because, hey, you know what? Let's put Skews out there for 125 pitches after we're winning. The game is well in hand. Complex League, by the way, Alex, starts tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah,
starts tomorrow at noon.
Yes, thank you. So
we don't have the roster, though. I was looking at the roster earlier, and they don't have it updated yet.
Yeah, $5 says they won't have it up till Tuesday after the game starts. Seems like that'd be the case. No, but Paul Skews pitched 125 innings in a game that LSU had well in hand. Why the hell was he throwing 125 pitches? I'm not sure. Oh, hey, Elton. Thank you, sir. And honestly,
whoa,
yeah, $20. Thank you. What am I fun? You know what? He deserves. Actually, Elton, you deserve this one.
How about that?
I gave him a Mel Allen.
Nice.
You know what? And also, I got another one for him, actually, because this one we don't play. I haven't given him. Was it the? This is the other one I have. What is it? Oh man.
Give him his due.
Give him his due. Yeah, this is the one. What is it? I'll give him it. No, that's the other one. Damn it. Oh, here it is.
Give him his due.
How about that? Yeah, here we go. One more time.
Give him his due.
There we go. Yeah. So what were we? Yeah. So the Complex League starts tomorrow. Elton, interesting comment here, because he's talking about Scott Harris, and there's some people who are already very highly critical of Scott Harris, which seems kind of strange to me. Now, listen, things haven't worked out great. overall, I think the Tigers are probably about where everybody expected they would be. It's been some ups and downs, but they're six games under 500 right now, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, his point is that Scott Harris is making moves left and right, and that's true. A lot of them are just kind of picking players up off the scrap heap all over the place, which is I think it's one way to find guys. That's kind of what did Cisco. But yeah, I mean, like it's hard not to look at the lineup and go, well, he didn't do a whole lot. But I'm just, we don't know the inner workings of the Tigers this year, but we're assuming that basically he had about $20 million to work with. That's what they spent on, and then they spent it on Boyd, Lorenzen, and Shreve, because I guess he looked at the roster and said, we need more pitching depth. And you know what? They've needed more pitching depth. They're at the end of the rope now, but they've been able to stay afloat here for the first couple months. But they don't really have any offense to speak of, and we've seen that with Riley Green going down. Like, boy, the team doesn't do much of anything. 3 runs in 3 games this weekend. And the other guys he's brought in to hit, Eitan, Vierling, other than McKinstry's been good. Seems to be cooling off a little bit right now, but Nevin, Ibanez, those guys haven't done much of anything. So it's just tough. It's tough to try to rebuild an entire offense on the fly. I'm not, super positive or super negative about him. I just want to give him a little bit more time than, 4 months on the job or 6 months or whatever it's been.
So, by the way, there was an interesting thing, 2 interesting things that happened over the last couple of days. First and foremost, Josh Lester got his first major league hit with the Baltimore Orioles. So congratulations to him. So props to him. And Tony Paul was on Justin Spiro's show, I think Thursday or Friday, got tagged on the tweet. Shout out to the Justin Spiro show. And they talked about that Tony Paul is saying the Tigers are going to spend money this offseason. And Tony, we've got to know Tony. And Tony's not one of those guys that's full of crap. He's one of the best at what he does. And so, not to get too far off the minor league topic, but I thought that was important to bring up because it would make a lot of sense. Because if you look, I will give, and Elton's correct, at least Harris is trying everything. I mean, it's like literally, it's you look at the kitchen cupboard, and it's bare. It is bare. He's doing everything he can, and that is the reason why you see something like, for example, when Sawyer Gibson Long missed a start, it was because he was working the bullpen developing a cutter, which came out pretty well, which we'll talk about that a little later, because the Tigers see something in him, and at some point you might see him in Toledo soon. Who knows? But they are at least trying. Like, you're hearing, like, this is like, in terms of like, maybe because my sources have gotten better, I don't know, but some of my sources is it just me, Chris? I feel like every day I'm telling you something new.
Yeah, well, it depends on what you mean, but yeah, like there's I don't know. Yeah, I could see, and we get this because of what we do, but the one thing Scott Harris hasn't tried is calling up all his prospects, right? Like,
yeah,
that's what everybody wants. Hey, bring them up. Let's call them all up. That's the one he hasn't tried, because I think they don't want to expose these guys right now. For whatever reason, they don't think they're ready. We've seen this with baseball all over the place. You just talked about Josh Lester. Josh Lester toiled in the minors forever until he hit like 70 home runs, and they're like, all right, fine, we'll bring you up. And they gave him like 6 at bats, and that was it. Baseball people see things differently than we do.
Yeah.
As much as, and we try to pay as much attention as we can, but some baseball people will just look at a guy swing and say, nope, that's never going to work. And that's it. And it's like, oh, all right. So I don't know, man. Like, yeah, but I think June will be a big month in terms of things happening. I'll say it like that, right? Like, we know that just from we talked about earlier about Erie's, playoff hunt. But I think some of these veterans on the Tigers are going to be gone before the end of the month. Some youngsters are going to be replacing them, and it's going to be like that. There's going to be kind of a concatenation down through the system where we're going to see guys move up and move around. But it's just going to be, I think, a couple more weeks.
Yeah, and especially because Erie's in the thick of the playoff race right now, and we talked about this last year, and it makes a difference to the morale of a team in the playoff hunt. I mean, you got to give props to Gabe Alvarez over the last few weeks with the starting rotation, which has been pitching a lot better as of late. And you go down, they don't ever ever go down in Richmond and go 5-1. Erie doesn't do that. Erie has always struggled on the road down there. Something about that place, something about the unicorn song, which I don't want to talk about that. That was, anyway, that was in my head all day. But
they wouldn't.
Go ahead.
They treated Richmond like Indianapolis treated Toledo, right? Like they just demoralized them and demolished them. It was what did they outscored Richmond? I've got it here, 46-12. 46-12 in 6 games. It's a shock that they lost any games that week, but they're playing really well on both sides of the ball.
And Bradley had a question on our YouTube chat. Do the Tigers have the worst international prospects in baseball? Fewer international prospects get past Lakeland. Bradley, that's a good question. And tell you the truth right now, it's not looking. I mean, you can talk about Campos, you can talk about a couple things, but as of right now, the track record outside of where they've gone everywhere else, talk about Adonis, you talk about Suarez and all that. It doesn't. The track record right now does not look good. Flat out. If I'm going to be honest with you, Bradley, you're on to something. You're flat out correct. It's not looking good, and it hasn't looked good yet because you look at other teams. I was looking at the Padres earlier because I'm doing an article for Fansided. I'm doing my top 15 prospects of Major League Baseball for Fansided version 2.0, and their top 4 prospects, Chris, are all under 21. All under 21, and it's just
Salas.
Yeah, Salas,
Jackson Merrill.
Yeah.
Robbie Snelling. Is he up there? Or Dylan Lesko?
Yeah.
Hey, all right. Good to be.
Nice.
My Padres prospect. Yeah. And they have the kid that I saw this year. He pitched in West Michigan opening day. Erie Arte. I've forgotten his first name. But he was nasty. He was like 95, 96 with a slider and a really good changeup. It's been like 4 or 5 years since I've done a deep dive on the international market. But back then, the Tigers were bottom 5 and everything in terms of WAR from international players to the big leagues, all-star games. Since then, a couple guys have gone on to the all-star game. Garcia and Gregory Soto, I think, worked out for them from the international market. But right now, you're pointing at Campos. You're pointing at Kyler Montero, basically.
Right.
Christian Santana was a guy we were really excited about, but he's broken this year. We don't know what's going on. Abel Bastidas has started playing a little bit for Lakeland. He's, it's too early to say anything. We've seen some flashes from Adinso Reyes and Jose de la Cruz, but nothing consistent from them. And, that Javier Osorio, the guy they spent all their money on last year, like one of the biggest bonuses ever, had one of the worst debuts in all of the Dominican Summer League. Now, Raylan Perez had an awesome debut. And I've always just been kind of like crossing my fingers that the Tigers get one of these guys one day, that, they give them not one of these $2 million bonus guys, just a 6-figure bonus guy, $100,000 or whatever, who pulls a Fernando Tatis Jr. and just goes, oh, you know what? I'm going to grow 2 inches and get super athletic all of a sudden. Because sometimes that can happen when you get 16, 17-year-olds. And Raylan Perez sounds promising, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, there's Elton brings up a good point about, he said, Harris has no loyalty. There's young guys in the minors he has no loyalty to. The only ones he actually show love to is Justin Henry Malloy and Keith. All the rest got to show him love or show him first. And he's right. But I look at it this way. Look at guys like, for example, Eric De La Rosa, who was regressing really well. We thought he was progressing. But then we're hearing a term that we have not heard before, which is put him back in developmental camp. So it's like, what's that? And it's like, oh, well, you're not performing up to the Tiger standards. I mean, that's another, I can't think of any other way to put it, Chris. I mean, we're seeing it at a lot of players that were at one point we were talking very highly of. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you're noticing now that there's been a regression, or not regression necessarily, but they're like, oh, you don't fit our standards? Psh, go out.
Yeah, and I think it's been a bit of a sea change there. That we talked about it before. We've talked about this for years and years and years. The organization will tell you what they think of their players, but how they treat their players, not necessarily, but like how much they're playing them, where they send them. Do they start back in AA? Well, that's interesting. That tells you what they want these guys to prove, or that they weren't terribly excited about them to begin the year. And we thought Wilmer Flores was headed, definitely ticketed for Toledo this year, right? He starts back in the year. We're like, what's that all about? Well, in so far this year, he hasn't looked as good as he did last year. I don't know if one caused the other, or what. But in some of the guys, this is the case with every organization. They give favored status to their draft picks, right? If you're a later round draft pick, you just have to keep performing like crazy to start to get noticed. It's the Kerry Carpenter effect, right? But when the new regime comes in, they don't care. So we've seen Gage Workman basically had his playing time almost eliminated. He was playing once or twice a week there for a couple weeks, almost a month, basically. He's playing like 4 or 5 times. He's back in playing more. But Daniel Cabrera was the same situation, former second round draft pick. They sent him to the developmental list. They don't particularly care about these guys, their draft status. They want them to perform, which is, I don't know if it's tough love or it's like a completely different set of eyes, and they just don't think these guys can play. But yeah, I mean, I think that Eldon has a point that Harris wants to see these guys perform before. There's no draft status based promotions. It's all merit based now, theoretically.
No, and I mean, there's guys like, for example, you see like Andrew Navigado, who had a really good week. He might be running for Player of the Week in the Eastern League. And even with like Trey Cruz, for example, Trey Cruz last year was, I mean, in terms of like prospects status, was kind of soured a little bit as far as, but then I don't like whatever happened in the offseason. When he talked about, and answered my questions about the offseason, it sounded like he just became a much more engaged player, and it's showing on the field. The results are showing. He had another leadoff home run. It's finally, like as Greg was talking about on the broadcast, Erie has found themselves a regular lineup a little bit, and Trey Cruz is always on the top and has performed very well. And so this is a guy who last year was, as far as organization goes, organizational quote unquote favorites, he wasn't there. Now all of a sudden it's a different set. There's guys like, even I'm thinking of, like, for example, Jake Holton too. Jake Holton was kind of, I don't want to say it sounds like a dickhead thing to say, but like not an afterthought, but Holton was there, but you weren't sure what his role is. Now it feels like it's more and more of these players that were on the fringe have gotten better. Like Navigato's been somewhat consistent. And even with Corey Joyce out in Toledo, he's been serviceable. But then Mr. 300, Johnny Valenti, not sure what's going on. So it's really bizarre in some cases with some of the prospects.
Yeah, with Cruz, I think hit his 8th home run of the year, was it? Tied his total from all of last year. He has a lot of things that you like in a leadoff hitter. He walks a lot. He's got a little bit of pop to get you out to that early lead. He'll steal a base every now and then. He's not a great hitter for average, but he hits enough, and hitting from both sides of the plate and playing all over the field. Valuable guy. So it's nice that they figured that out for him. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of the story of the week in Erie, other than the great pitching, which we talked about, I think, right? We just touched on it that basically everybody pitched well. Herder had 3 earned runs. Ty Madden gave up 5 earned runs for 6 innings, 9 hits. But Montero, 6 scoreless, 9 strikeouts, I believe was a career high. Sawyer Gibson Long, you mentioned, 6 scoreless. I think he had 8 strikeouts. And Flores had 9 innings, 14 strikeouts, 5 walks, but we'll take those 14 strikeouts. That's a good sign.
Yeah. So
the pitching was great. But what I was saying on the offense, you got it there. You had Navigado had a good week. Cole Keith had a good week. Jake Holt had a good week. Trey Cruz had a good week. Just about everybody. Nobody had like a crazy good week, but they were all producing. Ben Malgeri, 6 for 23 with 6 RBIs. Winsel Perez had 7 hits, 3 doubles, 3 walks, scored 6 runs. Gage Workman, classic Gage Workman, only had 2 hits, but they were both home runs. Even Dylan Dingler, 5 for 25, 2 doubles, a homer, no walks and 10 strikeouts. But they all produced a little bit. They were all putting the ball in play, and that's just it's a tough lineup when you got literally you go up and down. There's 7, 8 guys any night that can hurt you.
Yeah, now that you have the pitching to go with it, it makes them probably one of the better teams in the Eastern League. I mean, they did well against Somerset, and Somerset's usually the cream of the crop when it comes to that. And I know that Altoona, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, they've lost a couple players to Indianapolis that moved up to AAA.
Yeah. So Henry Davis just moved up. So
thank God.
That's a big one because he's been destroying the Eastern League. Former first overall pick Henry Davis. So that should help. But and Erie is heading into Bowie, right? Bowie is in last place. Not heading into Erie. Bowie is coming to Erie, I should say. But what's that? Sam Bowie coming.
I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything.
But yeah, so theoretically, you'd like to think that the SeaWolves are in a pretty good spot right now, but you still have to go out there and do it. But they've got the guys who are playing. One of the bummers is about Richmond. We talk about this every year. Is the camera angle from center field is just garbage, and I don't know if it's there must be just direct sunlight right into the camera, and they haven't done anything to fix it. There's no hood over it or something like that. But for the first 3 innings of any evening game, you're basically looking through like the basement of a vape shop. It's impossible to see anything. It's just pure white steam. So they have to give us bad angles from behind the plate or whatever. So I cut together. We got Flores' first outing. I got Herder's outing up there. I got Montero's that's going up tonight. But they're not the best looks at these guys. But if you want to go see them on the YouTube page, you can.
By the way, somebody shout out to Elton mentioning the Kale Org reference, and I remember Lynn Henning getting pretty excited about him. And another guy he got excited for, I really remember the Nate Cornejo experience for some of the veterans in this group that are watching us tonight on YouTube. There's so many times where I can think of guys that, like the Tony Giordano, who I made a reference to last week. That was somebody else that was getting some really prospect love. And so, yeah, it's interesting to see some of those names. Cal Org, wow, that's a flashback. Good call there, Calvin.
Yeah, Cal Org was Dave Dombrowski. I remember saying was like he had all-star tools or whatever, but he just couldn't hit, which is somewhat essential when you're trying to play baseball. But
yeah, I mean, also because his dad was a former major leaguer, correct?
His uncle too. I think his uncle was the better one. Didn't he Garth and Eli and
didn't Garth or was it Kale lose a couple of years because of a Mormon mission, correct?
He was, I believe so, yeah, because I think he went to, is he an Alabama kid? I think he went to Alabama.
No, I think he was Canadian. Yeah, he was from Canada though, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, he was born in Toronto because his dad was playing in Toronto when it was a Blue Jay in the early 80s.
Oh, makes sense to me.
He went to he went to Alabama.
But I think he only played there for 1 year for going off on that mission.
Yeah, that's correct. I believe it was, but yeah, Cornejo. Well, to be fair, Michael, even Cornejo was before he got injured wasn't good. I mean, again,
didn't he have one of the worst, like the lowest strikeout rates of all time?
Yes, yeah. In terms of like guys that went out here, but in terms of Warren Flores, Stan, I was asking about his changeup. He is throwing the changeup more. Stan, he is not. It's not a pitch he's going away from, but in terms of he's commanding that better with the slider and the fastball. So I think he's finally getting that more in his repertoire, if you will. I don't know, Chris. I mean, to me, it looks a little like it's getting peppered in there more, but not as frequent.
Yeah, I think he's working it in when he needs to. It's not. He doesn't have great command of it yet. It's not it's not a pitch that he can count on yet. But he's working it in enough. And to me, his stuff just looked better this week. It looked like his fastball was more electric, had more kind of late ride through the zone. His breaking balls were sharper. I think he's just starting to, I don't want cross your fingers, but it looks like he's just starting to get back to his form from last year where everything's just a little bit sharper. I did have that 5-walk game on Tuesday, which was not great, but the stuff looked better. He was just having trouble harnessing it. And then he did today, just for 4 innings.
Yeah. And that was something that was encouraging, that he was able to go out there at least a couple times and be somewhat, I don't say effective. He was effective. And to see some of the glimpses come back, the strikeout stuff, that was a positive sign, because if the Tigers, as far as, like I mentioned this earlier, their rotation this year has been, the Erie rotation's been been through a lot of ups and downs. They got a new pitching coach, got a rookie pitching coach. So there's been a lot of different types of kind of hand holding right now with their coach and what have you. And so it's just good to see that. I mean, they needed needed this week and they've come into their own.
Yeah. So Stan with an interesting question there. It's basically trying to how do you tell which pitch the pitcher's throwing? Is that what he's asking?
Games, how do you know the pitch to pitch or pitch? Well, simply put, his changeup is when he comes in on right-handers is kind of has a little has fade action to the bottom right. So you look at the catcher's glove like this. Actually, let me take this off.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the easiest things to do, and it's you don't get this in every minor league broadcast, but having the velocity on there is a great way for you to know what pitch is going. Obviously, if it's 50, it's going to be a fastball for the most part. That's the superhuman. And then changeups tend to be 8 to 10 miles an hour slower than that, and breaking balls more like 10 to 12. But yeah, a lot of it has to do with the movement. You can kind of tell sometimes a changeup, like Roger was saying, that changeup will just kind of almost looks like it stops and drops away from a right-handed pitcher, just kind of floats down and away, whereas a breaking ball will curl in towards a left-handed batter, things like that. But there was a great article in Baseball America recently that our buddy Jeff wrote. I think Roger's grabbing the magazine. It's also online if you have the subscription. But he was just saying, hey, here's how you know how to know what you're looking for. He even had a flow chart in it, didn't it? Fun little flow chart. Who doesn't love a flow chart? Yeah, it's one of those things that just takes practice. Sometimes we'll be at games. We'll be like, was that a changeup? It's like, I think it's a slider. And like, we don't really know. It's sometimes if you're not paying full attention. So.
Yeah, they even go over the grips. Like honestly, if you get a chance to read this on Baseball America, and the only reason why I'm showing this to the camera is like if you go to, it's worth the subscription. I got the print version this year, and this has been kind of there's another Baseball America magazine where it's like highlighted for some of the stuff I do for show prep, because a lot of times for example, when we were Erie last last year, when there was a couple times where I was like, it looks like a slider. And was it the guy who was doing the Hawkeye go, oh no, that was a changeup.
The cutter. Well, we were out there for Flores against Altoona. Flores got blown up early in the season.
That's right.
And you were working the gun, and I wasn't. So I was just looking, and I couldn't tell that he was throwing a changeup at all. Couldn't tell. And you were like, he threw a couple changeups against Detroit. All right. I wish part of that was just our angle, right? We were a little bit close. Yeah. You can't really see. You're right behind the catcher, but it just takes time. You figure it out eventually.
It's a tumbling action. If it tumbles in on the lower to righties and on lefties, he doesn't really throw it to lot to lefties. It's more of a right-handed pitch. But because the reason why we were talking about this last year, he has two types of sliders. One is that sweeping slider that has kind of like that horizontal horizontal movement, and then he has a like one that has more vertical movement, right? Or
I mean, with Flores, I consider it just more a traditional slider and a traditional curveball. I think
like a short slider, right?
That's the way I describe it. Whereas, they've kind of altered the way that they describe pitches now. They put it into sliders and sweepers. And sweepers tend to be a little bit slower and have a lot more horizontal movement. And those have been, in all the rage over the last couple of seasons. I'm trying to Brendan White throws more of a sweeper than a traditional slider, I think. And his really, some of that has to do with the arm angle. It's kind of, they're like on a continuum, right? Like there's a cutter, and there's a slider, and then there's a sweeper. They're all kind of there, and then the curveball just has more vertical. But a lot of times, guys will call a pitch something when it looks like something else, and you just go, all right, whatever. Like, okay, yeah, that's your curve. Okay, sounds good. So sometimes it's just go, all right, it's a breaking ball or it's an off-speed pitch.
Yeah, and especially when you ask them during an interview, they give you a weird look like, that's that, and and you're like, oh, sorry, it looks like this. But then they realize like that happens, and so Jeff Sanders wants to know if Cole keeps the truth. Absolutely, Cole keeps the truth.
I mean, what do you mean by the truth?
I mean, if you talk about is he the second coming of is the next big prospect that's going to break out for the Tigers, or excuse me, break out the Tigers period? Yes, he has the potential to do so.
Yeah. What the thing I've been thinking about lately is like who who's the number 2 prospect in the system? Who do we put at number 2 once Colt Keith graduates? It's like, man, they might just be waiting until the draft so they could graduate Colt Keith and go, here's my new number 1. Because it's tough right now. Like nobody, had Jackson Jobe stayed healthy, probably would be him, right? And if he comes back healthy, maybe it could be him. It's just because of the upside there. And had he, AJ Hinch said that he was doing everything that they want him to do and looking good. We moved Parker Meadows up to number 2 based heavily on how good he looked in the spring, and he's just been kind of, adequate so far this year. Ty Madden has had an awesome first start, hasn't looked anything like that since. Justin Henry Malloy had that great start, is coming back down to earth. Jace Jung is heating up. It's been 1 week.
He hit 565 this week. We'll get to West Michigan here shortly.
Yeah. Justice Bigby? I don't think so, but who knows? Maybe.
You consider maybe Roberto Campos, but after upon further reflection, we'll talk about that too, because there was.
Yeah, are we done with Erie?
Yeah, we're done with Erie. Yeah, we're gonna move on here. But or maybe even Chris Myers, who also had a good week. He hit 563 this week in 16 in 60. He had 9. He went 9 for 16 in 5 games, so he had a pretty good week. I don't think he's the number 2. I'm being kind of joking. But good, former Toledo Rocket doing his thing. So
yeah, well, it does feel kind of like the line now between number 2 and whoever, number 30 in the system. It's like, well, I don't know. It could be. It depends on. Maybe we're just paying too much attention. We got to come back at the end of the year and go, okay, he's number 2. But
I think Sergio might be onto something though. I think if Sergio says Jace Jung number 2.
Okay. Well, all right, we can discuss this. All right.
Yeah.
So Jace Jung started the week 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. First game on Tuesday, and then after that he went 13 for 19 with 3 doubles, 2 homers, 4 walks. 3
walks, 3 walks and 6 strikeouts.
10 RBIs, raised his batting average from 221 to 274 in 1 week. I haven't been basing my opinions on him on the stats much as how he's looked. But he has looked better too. He's getting the fastballs more. He's getting the elevated fastballs more. He's not missing the breaking balls low and in as much. And we saw something similar with Spencer Torkelson 2 years ago, where he got off to a really slow start in the beginning of the season in West Michigan. And then he was hitting 235 1 month in the season. And then he had 2 good weeks and was off to Erie. He left West Michigan hitting like 315. So maybe Jung is in the middle of that. If he hits well again next week, then the breakout could be real and he could be off to Erie. Because we thought West Michigan was in this. They were playing well. They were pretty close to first place. They're still in second place at, what are they, 28 and 23? But they're now 7 games behind the Great Lakes Loons because the Loons won 10 games in a row before losing today because the Dodgers are an unstoppable player development machine and they have quality players up and down the system. So it wouldn't shock me if, once West Michigan is out of it and Jung is still performing, if he's up to West Michigan or up to Erie. So good on him. He's probably going to be week, and I don't think anybody can stop it.
Oh, he went quiet there, Chris. For whatever reason,
how about now?
All right, you're good. Say that again. Just say that last part again.
I said it was a highly productive week. I wouldn't be shocked if he's Midwest League Player of the Week because it was a highly productive week.
Yeah, and even on the side of in terms of the pitching side, West Michigan's had strong pitching all year, and it continues to be so. So Gary Burhan, strong start, 6 innings. He, along with Wheakill Hernandez, both went 6 innings this week. Had good quality starts. Trey Melton also had a much better start than he did in his debut. But as far as rest of in terms of like bullpen wise, if in case you're interested, the Carlos Pena's kind of come down to earth a little bit. You got kind of beat up today, but one guy that also had a pretty good week was in terms of well, not necessarily bullpen, but Sarah Skubal pitched a pair of scoreless innings today with just allowing 1 hit and was efficient. Didn't really have to go through too much of a struggle in his rehab start. And Trevor Michael continues to do what he's supposed to do as a veteran draftee, a pair of scoreless innings, has struck out 4. So he's adjusting to high A ball very well. And he continues just to be a solid bullpen guy. Jordan Marks also with a pair of scoreless innings this week. And that was good to see. So, but yeah, Great Lakes is just ridiculous. I mean, there's not a spot in the lineup on there that's just, struggled or not bad. They're deep. No, not kind of. No, Carl Spanga just was not good this week, period. A lot of stuff was hanging up in the zone. So Michael brings up a really good point about Young. If Young slow shows with the bat, it would be a good idea to give him some first base experience. It seems like moving guys around and Young looks like a first baseman. I wouldn't see that as a realm of out of the possibility. And
yeah, it wouldn't shock me if he moves around a little bit. I think he's comparable to Cody Clemens. I think maybe slightly less athletic, but Clemens played a little third, played a bunch of first. But Young is actually a very good second baseman. He just doesn't have a ton of range, but if he's got a shot to make a play, he makes it 99% of the time. It's really impressive. But yeah, it's just not super quick twitch athleticism there. But it wouldn't shock me if they play him at first some down the road. Just to if they have somebody else who can play better defensive second base, but they want his bat in the lineup, which is, it's gonna be a bat in the profile no matter what, right? If he's playing all over the field, that probably hasn't worked out that great. But wouldn't hurt. They tend to not start moving those guys around until a little bit later, unless you're a middle infielder and they kind of move you, give you some second, give you some third, give you some shortstop. But like a middle infielder traditionally, like a Kreidler or Workman, is more of a second base only guy like Young.
There is, one of the things that talk about the offense too, before we forget, who didn't have a bad week who had a bad week, by the way, Isaac Pacheco, 1 for 21, batted a buck or 0.48, which is, he's in some sort of funk right now. Sergio wants to know if anything about Jackson Jobe. As of yet, we haven't heard anything as of yet. So to catch up here on YouTube a little bit, there are a couple of questions in here. Elton asked about Mickey. Should the Tigers try to get him to retire early? He's going to get his world tour. He's going to go in Tribe Called Quest style. He's going to have a world tour. Then his career.
Yeah. They can play him even less, but I don't think it's going to take him off the team or whatever, right?
Right.
He's just going to hang around. This is the bed they made. Maybe had they continued playing really well, or they go on like a 15-game winning streak or something like that, that maybe something could be done there, and a phantom trip to the 60-day IL. But I don't think they would do that. I think they're just gonna have to ride it out and try to find spots to use them, which is what they've been doing.
As far as Jeff Sanders in the YouTube chat, if Dingler keeps going, I would have no doubt we have a spot for catcher given what we've seen lately. Dingler, look, Dingler today, if there's one thing about Dingler, the last couple weeks he's had really quick at bats because teams are just throwing sliders and he's not picking up on spin, and he's just 4 or 5 pitches and he's done. And either he grounds out or he strikes out. And if you give him a fastball, he'll hammer it all day long. He'll hammer a fastball, but it looks like he's been having problems picking up spin as of late. He still commands a good game. He did a good job filling in for Rodriguez, who got hit in the toe. It was down yesterday, and it looked like it was a pretty rough injury for him.
I think they put him on the IL because they brought up another catcher in there. They brought Burgess.
Colin Burgess, Colin Burgess, yeah. So, and those guys, those catchers take a lot of beating, but at first it didn't look that bad when you first saw it at first, but then you see the replay, like, yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, man, we loved Dingler when we saw him in West Michigan that first year. He looked so good, and we've always been fans of his. But yeah, it's just you make a cross in the middle of the strike zone, like, I don't know, 8 inches wide by 8 inches wide. If you throw the ball in there, middle, anywhere in that, he'll hit it hard. Anywhere else, and he's going to swing right through it or miss it. I don't know. It's a real bummer. He's striking out like 35% clip. to me, we talked about this before. He's basically Jake Rogers part 2, maybe a little bit more athletic, but that's going to be the kind of hitter he is. I think he may run into a couple home runs, but he's going to struggle to hit 200 in the big leagues.
Yeah,
unless he makes a big change.
Yeah, and again, it just kind of begs the question what the Tigers might do at 3 this year. If honestly, they might do this. Like we were joking about this a few weeks ago about Teal, because I almost put him in my mock draft, and Chris and I were going back and forth about it. I'm like, are they gonna try to do the smartest guy in the room thing, joking around? But the possibility now might be real, because I mean he has been a very good player in the ACC and he's put up some really good numbers. Now, again, I have to see what he does in Cape Cod with the wooden bats and all that, but still, if those 2 options at outfield are gone, and you don't want to go with Clark or the guy from Texas I'm trying to blank on right now.
Well, there's Walker Jenkins is from North Carolina.
North Carolina. I thought it was from Texas. Maybe because
his name's Walker.
Yeah, Jenkins. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is the Tigers were seen heavily, with heavy hitters. Their scouting director and AGMs at Kyle Teal's series, Virginia versus Georgia Tech. So they were there. People just assume, okay, that's them doing due diligence, but there is a thought that if Langford and Cruz are gone, that they won't go after Skeens and they won't go after the high school guys. So they're looking for the 3rd best college bat, and that might be Kyle Teal, the catcher out of Virginia, who left-handed hitter, has some power, has some hitting ability, gets on base, is athletic enough to play the outfield. He's interesting. It would be kind of rough to pass up on the high school outfielders. Maybe they just don't like those guys. I don't know. So that's kind of the way the winds are blowing right now. So you just gotta hope that somebody works out a funky deal. The Pirates go after Clark, or the Nats take Skeens, or something like that. Or the Tigers might be picking Kyle Teal, the catcher, 3rd overall.
Something tells me LSU is going to screw me over somehow. I feel like LSU is going to do this to again. I whatever. I don't even want to get into it. I'm just so, when I saw that, what is this? This is not Rice University, okay? We're not old school Rice. No, sorry, because I should say Jose Cruz Jr. is doing a fantastic job at Rice now. I'm talking Rice 20 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, where they were putting out their pitchers 140, 150 pitches. No big deal. They're fine. They're fine. Okay.
Well, I think, when they say Skeens' last pitch was it 98 or was it 100? He's a freak. And one of the things that people aren't quite mentioning enough, I don't think, this year is it was like a juice ball year in college baseball. The offensive numbers are absurd. And so what he's done looks like, in any year, it looks like an awesome year of pitching. But when you consider it against what's been going on around the rest of baseball, it's really remarkable how well he's done. But, people just are scared of pitchers now. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, the injury, the idea of injury has gotten in there. So let's move on to Lakeland. And Lakeland this week had the rains came in Lakeland. It's at that time of year, all of a sudden it starts raining a lot. And there we go. Teal went 4 for 5 with a double and a home run in a regional championship game versus East Carolina today against Virginia. Thank you, Stan, for that. That is, and here's
he went bonkers.
Huh?
He went bonkers in that series against Georgia Tech, where the Tigers brass was there. Like, he had an amazing series. It was like, uh-oh. So,
the Tigers are just like. And then Sergio in our chat said Tigers don't have a number 1 starting pitcher in their system. If Cruz and Langford are gone, you got to take Skees. Can't imagine a high school battle over Skees. Honestly, Sergio, if the Tigers have been developing pitching from any round now, so I'm not if they don't get him, I'm fine with that, because the Tigers have been able to, at least for the most part, develop their own pitching in the last several seasons. So I'm not. And as Stan mentioned, you have a bat like that. He hits from the left side. They need a bat. I'm sorry. They need a bat more than they need a pitcher. I mean, I think you can, go ahead, Chris.
They do. They need everything. But obviously the offense it's not good for the Tigers right now, and they need more bats in the system. It's just a matter of like where we think Scott Harris, his mentality comes from. He came up under Theo Epstein and the Cubs, and when the Cubs were doing their thing, they were always taking the best college bat available at the top of the draft. They passed on pitchers over and over again, and that kind of ended up backfiring on them because they won the World Series, but they couldn't develop a pitcher to save their lives. So they kept having to trade for pitchers, and they traded away, Dylan Cease and guys like that to get Jose Quintana, and it didn't work out for them. But I think that's probably the way that Scott Harris leans. If you don't take a pitcher that high, because if they break, you've got nothing. And they're more likely to break than position players, I guess. So it's just a kind of a numbers game there. But it would be hard for me to pass up on a guy like that. You get him to the majors probably in like 3 months.
Yeah, I mean,
Skeens.
Yeah, and I understand that, but at the same time, I think the difference between the Cubs and Tigers is the Tigers have been able to, under the tutelage of Chris Vetter and the entire development staff, it's been pretty impressive. Like, it's not, I know, like I said, just seeing guys at all levels performing just harmoniously to a certain extent, except for Lakeland, which we'll talk about here shortly. But West Michigan has been pitching better. You're seeing things out of arms that are not just like top 5 round, top 9 or whatever top of the draft guys are. And so to me, when you see, I'll give you an example. A prime example was this with Willie Peralta. Okay. Willie Peralta wasn't much when he came here. Excuse me. He wasn't much when he came here. He came away with a better splitter, I think it was a change. He got better. His number, he was serviceable. Drew Hutchison was serviceable. I'm not saying these are all-star names or anything, but the Tigers found a way to use them. That you could not say that about the Tigers 10 years ago. You couldn't say about the Tigers rarely ever in the last since probably the year 2000. You cannot say as far as like Tigers developing players. Stan, really, please explain lack of development in Toledo this season. The only thing I can tell you is health, because either the Toledo's had, I think, 4 or 5 guys on the IL. As far as development goes for pitching wise, Toledo has been never slated to have. You look at the rotation start of the year. Outside of Olsen, who else did they have? They had a bunch of minor league free agents because they had nobody else. So if you want to look at development, I would go more towards Erie than Toledo. Toledo, you had Hannafy, you had a bunch of bullpen arms they signed. Toledo had no real starting staff. As far as I'm concerned, Ashton, what's that guy's name? I always forget his name. Godot. That was it. Castro, all these arms they brought in was just going to be a wave of arms that are going to ring up 75. Simple as that. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's just talking pitching or if he's talking the hitters too, but it's Toledo's rough. Well, and just like to put a ribbon on that whole point, like who is the most exciting, most talented pitching prospect the Tigers have had in the last 4 years or so? I'll give you a hint. Yeah, he pitched today. He was a 9th rounder.
Yeah.
You can find guys like that. It doesn't happen all the time, but good teams find great arms later. Bobby Miller, the Dodgers, they got him at the end of the first round. He's out there throwing 100 with like 4 solid to above average pitches. If you have really good development, you can find these arms. There are a lot of guys who can throw hard, and a lot of guys who have interesting abilities to spin the ball and things like that. You got to find them and upgrade them. It's rare to get a tailor-made potential ace like Skeens, and if you have a chance to get them, I understand the temptation, but I don't know. I think the Tigers probably want to take a bat and then maybe take a risk on maybe a younger arm or one of the other arms that they can get cheaper in the comp round, second round, third round, whatever, where it's not as much of an investment monetarily for them.
Yeah, I mean, I look at another arm like Mason Egler. They're able to identify him. No one ever heard of Mason Egler until the Tigers drafted him in the Rule 5 draft. they identified something. And I'm saying they're doing a better job of identifying these things. And so whether it's Matt Whistler's throwing 800 sliders, whatever the case is, or Chase Shreve, the Tigers have a different mode of operation when it comes to pitching. And that's why I think I would not worry about it. I mean, I understand why Sergio would think that, but I just feel like that maybe under Avila would probably see that. But honestly, I feel a lot better about the Tigers developing pitchers as of late.
Yeah, and when Bradley said that, Bradley Davis said, Tigers seem to not have confidence to draft a high school position player. I guess they don't think they will develop them properly. We used to think that was the case under Avila and David Chad.
Yeah,
they did, and they got Cole Keith as a 5th-round high school player. We're like, but they never do this, and that one's worked out pretty well. But Mark Connor, the head of scouting now, drafted tons of high school players for San Diego, like 3 or 4 times as many as the Tigers did, and some of them worked out really well. You mentioned Jackson Merrill earlier. James Wood is a top 20 prospect. He just got called up to Double-A. Those guys were both in the same draft, so I don't think he's necessarily scared of taking a high school player. We also got to remember that we're 5 weeks away, and everything that we think we know right now might be completely wrong. The Tigers might be just trying to throw people off their scent. Maybe they love Walker Jenkins, so they're just trying to set people up for other things or get his bonus down. Who knows? We've seen this all the time. Every time we talk to these prospects, they tell us, oh yeah, I've heard a bunch of times that a team is going to draft me, and then they just pick somebody else. Like, we won't know until draft day. So just because they're out there scouting these college bets doesn't necessarily mean they're going to take them. But yeah, we'll see.
Andrew Miller brings up Justin Henry Malloy is still at 281 for put up a slash line and 796 career at bats. We probably shouldn't forget that he has more protections in a legitimate MLB lineup against the off speed. That's a good point, Andrew. I still think that teams are going to do, like, for example, what they do with the Nick Maton. They're going to just go on 3 straight sliders and call it a day.
Yeah, but what's interesting, and we put this in our article about May stats. Malloy is doing just fine against right-handed pitching. It's like a 900 OPS. He's getting absolutely destroyed by lefties, which is not what you expect. Except the thing we identified very early on is he does not like breaking balls coming at him. Either right-handed breaking balls to breaking into the inside of the plate, or lefties throwing sliders at him. He can't hit them right now, and that's sort of similar to Matt Vierling. And you see, Vierling's got decent numbers against right-handed pitching this year. He can't hit lefties to save his life, and so I don't know. I don't know if that's a swing flaw, if it's just a statistical anomaly right now, but it's something to pay attention to. And you know that the Tigers have far more detailed information than we do.
Right.
They know where he's hitting in every zone and what he's doing against the next velocity. They know everything. So other teams do too. I'm sure they have those advanced scouting reports and say, okay, we throw it right here. He can't do anything. I'm fascinated by if you watch a game on the Game Day app, they have the nice hot and cold zones there for every batter. And you'll see, Spencer Torkelson's cold zone, just an example, is down and away. And you'll see the opposing team throw 6 pitches right there. They know exactly what they're doing. They know how to target these guys' weaknesses. So Malloy's numbers have been solid overall. He's going to walk, got some pop, but he's got some flaws still that are going to get exposed if and when he does come up to the majors. Mm-hmm. Tough luck, dude.
Michael in the chat. I dated a girl who didn't like balls coming right at her. She said this at Cameron Yards, and the guy in front of me said, "Tough luck, dude."
Yeah. That's it. That's right out of Clueless, right? There goes your social life. But Lakeland. Speaking of
Lakeland. So
tough luck, dude.
Yeah, tough luck for Andrew Peyton Graham, who Elton said something about that earlier. He went 2 for 10 this week, although he only appeared in 3 games. Jose de la Cruz, rough sledding as well. He went 3 for 20. But Dom Johnson, the smallest guy on the team, 2 home runs, 11 RBIs, 4 walks, 2 strikeouts, batted .421. That was nice. Archer Bookman,
sneaky player of the week candidate. I didn't look to see who else might have put up numbers this week, but that's a good week in the Florida State League.
Christian Santana. I'm sorry, folks. 0 for 12.
Bakersfield, but with 6 walks and 5 strikeouts. He's a bizarre player this year.
Yes. The regression is. I wish I had an explanation. I'm not going down to Lakeland until next month. I'm trying to plan on maybe next month or August, but for now, I have no idea. People are asking us all the time. I really wish I had a better answer than this.
To me, the swing is just way too steep. It's looked like he's trying to hit a piñata off a ceiling or something like that. It's not conducive to line drive contact.
It's quite a bit of a colorful analogy. I like that.
Well, I'm trying to think of I wanted to say he's swinging at a bat flying around, but that gets confusing because of bats and bats. But yeah, it's he's obviously got a decent eye, but he's just swinging through everything, and it's a bummer. But he's so young. He's still 19. We're not going to close the door on him by any means. It's just I think we all got a little too excited last year when he hit. In retrospect, we probably should have been hitting 215 probably isn't all that great. He was walking a lot, he was showing power, but hitting 215, not something to get super excited about. So we'll have to remember that this year.
What sucks, by the way, is still they still don't have what's his face? It's still in the IL. I'm drawing a blank. Not Jenkins. Reyes. No. The guy who led the league in home runs last year. Why am I drawing a blank?
Led the Florida State League in home runs?
Yeah, led the Florida State League.
Oh, Manuel Sequeira.
Yeah, Sequeira. Thank you. Yeah, I know I couldn't think of
it. Yeah, he's been out. We mentioned Abel Vasquez is coming in. I don't know. Dom Johnson has always been he's intrigued me ever since they drafted him, just because of he is like a little short and mighty Mike guy. He's short but well built, and he's very fast, although he doesn't have the best base stealing instinct. But he's got 4 home runs in the season now, and I think 9-10 steals. So I think he leads the team in WRC plus. So he may be a guy we see in West Michigan later this year.
Elvis Alvarado started his rehab assignment down in Lakeland, so he started that I believe today, right? Was that today? It was
either today or yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's down there rehabbing. Max Green is down there rehabbing. I did not check to see what Alvarado's velocity is. So let's do that real quick.
All right, while you do that, I'll go over Cole Patterson.
Yeah.
Cole Patton had the best week in terms of just 5 innings, scoreless long, and no hits, 5 scoreless innings, 3 strikeouts. And in terms of what we'll get to, there's not really much else to say about Lakeland's pitching this week. Jose Diaz, it's really not much to tell, but Andrew Miller or Chad was talking about they all need to be up sooner or later, whether the Tigers want to or not. The Tigers, this lineup has no choice. Andrew, I think we were talking about this earlier. In the next few weeks, you're going to see some sort of changes. I think once the Erie first half season's over, once the first half of minor league season's over, you're going to see some stuff happening. Because at this point, they're going to have to. If the Tigers are going to try to stay competitive, they're going to do everything they can. And they're going to see what they have with their prospects. They go to Philly, and Philly's record may not indicate, but Philly's at home is going to be brutal. That's going to be a brutal 3 games. And then they come back to play the Diamondbacks, who are. We've talked about this. The Diamondbacks are no surprise to us because we were talking about they are playing very well. They're playing better than I guess their predictions people predicted, but they are a very good team. So the next week for the Tigers is going to be a brutal. This whole month is, but yeah.
And when you can't score, it's tough to win. I'm really holding out hope that Cole Patton does some things so that you can flex your Photoshop skills and put them in there with the Patton movie. Instead of George C. Scott.
Oh,
Cole Patton's face, and I want you to remember that no bastard ever lost a game by trying. But all right, I'm looking up. I'm just now getting to Elvis Alvarado's data. 729-735.
And how do you look?
Just 1 second.
Okay.
I was looking at Max Green was at 92-94, which is a little bit below I think he has been in the past. But all right, here we go. We've got player Elvis Alvarado, 5 swings and misses. He was not the hardest throwing pitcher in that game. That was Marco Jimenez, who touched 100.1, but he also gave up, I believe, 7 runs. which is not great.
They leave him out there. His stat line this week: 2 2/3 innings, 7 hits, 9 runs. He hits a batter, 2 walks, and a strikeout. A nice whip of 3.38.
So that's a tough one. So Alvarado threw 22 pitches, 13 fastballs, 9 sliders. Got 5 whiffs, 3 on the fastball, 2 on the slider. Fastball averaged 96.5, touched 99. Slider averaged 86.5, got up to 87. Fastball average spin rate 24.87, up to 2,600. That's a lot of spin on a 4-seam fastball. So
How about that?
there you go, the nerdy numbers. But so that's good. He's throwing just as hard as he always did. So that's good to see for health purposes. Probably see him in Erie. Maybe he'll work his way up to the system, but I bet he's in Erie in weeks or so.
Yeah, probably. Probably same thing with Max Green. All right, Chris, do we have any questions this evening?
I saw a couple on Twitter. I think that we may have touched on them all here in the chat, but let me go back through. We get, let's see, all right. So Pistons all day. All right, I'm going back down there. Who can we bring up to fix this? Well, Epic said, when do Young, Keith, Perez get promoted? Who do we want the Tigers to draft at 3?
I think we covered a lot of that today.
Yeah. One and Done Radio said, who can we bring up to fix this?
I
think he means the Tigers, right? Who can they bring up to fix? Nobody. There's no fixes. Cole Keith would probably hit under 200 for a month before he figures things out. That could help, but it will probably be rough. Maybe he'd get off to a hot start and then they'd figure him out and he'd have to adjust. But I'm sure he's probably better than at least one of the bats they have in the lineup right now. But I don't know if they're ready to do that to him. I don't know. You're gonna have to add him under the 40 man and all that stuff. Then Pistons all day asked us 3 questions. What's Colt Keith's next step and when? What's holding Gage Workman back from being promoted? And what's Jackson Job's timeline? I've been out of the loop. So touch on all those except for maybe Gage Workman. What's holding him back from being promoted is that he's not hitting very well. He's hitting 240 with a 35% strikeout rate. Is that about right?
Yeah.
That's basically it. If he could make more consistent contact, he'd be a monster, but he just can't, unfortunately. At least it seems that way.
So a couple of questions came through. Is Naporti done for the season, or he's going to have a pull of Bryce Harper? Naporti's done. I heard anything. He's pretty much, you'll see him next season.
He had Tommy John, right?
Yeah, he had Tommy John.
Yeah.
It sucks because he's well liked in the organization, and and then Sergio asks, are you willing to trade a few top 10, 15 prospects, or few top 10, ranked between 10 and 15? Anyway, are you trading? Yeah, go ahead, Chris, because I'm losing my brain.
I would think, I think that Scott Harris would happily do that but only if it's, not like rentals, right? He's not going to trade prospects to get slightly better this year.
Right.
But I mean, this is not a great example because these guys haven't been good this year, but something more like Maton and Vierling, where you're getting guys with 4, 5, 6 years of control who might be able to help down the road. I'm sure he would be happy to part with a couple of prospects in the system that he doesn't particularly care for that much. Doesn't think that they're gonna. What?
Oh, sorry, my phone just randomly sorry.
But I don't know. I mean, it's hard to know that if anybody would even want. It's not a terrific system. I don't know who's out there, begging to get a Winsel Perez or somebody like that, right? Like we've seen Perez move permanently to center field. He's looked okay out there, but he's also looked really raw out there. We saw him. He had a kind of a comical error today.
Oh yeah, that was
It was the first thing was he took a bad route because I think the ball was hit sort of directly at him and it knuckled on him, and he's just not used to playing center field. Then he picked it up as he was going to throw it. He accidentally threw it over towards the right fielder. It's like, so it's a work in progress. But I don't know. Yeah, like if Harris could move some of the minor leaguers for MLB talent, I'm sure he would and will. But I'm just not sure if teams are knocking down the Tigers' door for what they have.
And one last thing too, before, because I forgot to mention it, or I was going to mention this earlier. Roberto Campos has had let's say a field adventure in center field. Like again, there's one thing that I know people will say, well, you guys post a lot of stuff on Twitter and what have you. But we've been hearing a little bit that he's been kind of having a hard time out in the outfield, overrunning plays a little bit. So,
well, yeah. So it's an interesting case because we try to watch as much as we can, but then we also have the way what's happened this year is we can't go back and watch. We've got like a minute. You can go back and catch a play before we put it on Twitter, or else we have to wait till after the game. So we miss a lot of defensive plays or misplays, and unless it's like a run scoring play, sometimes we miss doubles, triples, things like that. And I've seen Roberto Campos make some nice plays in center field, like a handful of them. So I was like, hey, he's a much better defender. I've said it on the show, a much better defender than I thought. Well, then we went out there and saw, and we were like, I was like, hey, he looks pretty good. And somebody was like, hey, he looks like a butcher out there. And I'm like, huh? And then sure enough, in that game, like 3 or 4 terrible defensive plays, like, uh-oh. And then this week, he was in right field and lost the ball in the sun. I understand that. I guess, it's tough to have to everybody.
He was in center.
He was in right. This was a
different play. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
He lost the ball. Yeah, it was the Melton start. You can actually see it if you watch Melton's start. You can see it on our YouTube page. Lost the ball in the sun and got behind him. Happens to everybody, but as you're an outfielder, you got to kind of learn how to deal with that, right? And then the play that I think ultimately cost West Michigan the game the other night. He's playing center, line drive hit right at him, charging in, and then it was very much like an oh no. He should try to jump up, and he's got a nice vertical, but not nearly enough, and it got over his head and then scored 3 runs. It was brutal timing for a misread. And yeah, I mean, you hope he seems like a fairly athletic dude. You hope he can get that iron out, but some guys, I guess, just never quite have the instinct to play the outfield. So hopefully he can get that worked out because that would help.
Yeah, definitely go a long way. One last question before we get out of here. Henry Rankin wants to know, is Manning a TJ Tommy John candidate? It's been awfully quiet regarding his health. I think I saw him running on the field the other day. I think he's close to not coming back, but it was his foot. Yeah.
They mentioned him on the injury report that they put out. He's doing his rehab work. He's probably getting close to a rehab assignment before too long. Nothing wrong with his arm. Yeah, it was a broken toe from taking a liner. So every pitcher is a TJ candidate, but you doing blow over there? What's going on?
Oh no, I'm yawning. Oh no, I just don't like yawning on camera because I don't want to be so I keep yawning. I'm like, if I was doing if I was doing line of blow, I'd be a lot more hyper instead of yawning right now.
Well, I mean, that might be another way to get rid of yawns.
Yeah, but also it's like, I guess it's a.
Oh my God!
I don't know.
Talk about prospects for another 2 hours.
Let's go. Tell you right now, Colt, future. No, it's been a long weekend, and sort of feel, and it's a little bit past 11.
Yeah, it's a little bit later. But...
Yeah, it's a little bit later. So it's
the keys to victory.
Yeah, it's after hours here at Tiger Minor League Report here, and hopefully everybody's tuning in this evening. I'm
Tigers.
DJ Pillow Talk here, talking about your Tiger prospects here at 248-539. But I know that voice too well there. But at any rate, we'll be back on Thursday with another episode. And I know the guys probably want to do something beforehand, but to be honest with you, what is there to say about the White Sox series? Not much. They got Tiger Talk ASMR. I learned what AMSR was on an episode. Chris is fired up like he's on blow. I learned what ASMR was on an episode of Beavis and Butthead. It was one of the funniest episodes of Beavis and Butthead I've ever seen in my. I was in tears because I had no idea what it was. I didn't know it was a thing where you do this and.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
I don't like it. I think it's weird. I mean, I guess people like it. So
I've got
crack of the bat.
I've got a weird opposite reaction, and it's very specific. When somebody in commercials. When they try to crack open a beer and then pour it out, that all the sound, they're trying to make it appetizing, and all it does is make me physically cringe and crunch up my neck, and I don't know why.
Really?
But it's my least favorite sound in the world. I hate it, and it's on all the time.
Does that commercial? Does the Bush?
No, I'm fine with the Bush. Head for the mountains of Bush.
Bush. Because it's like that sound like
they know
Michael.
I love Bob Ross. I can handle that. He's just kind of whispering. It's not like scraping nails against plastic.
You do a little Bush here. Got a little prospect over here. Got some prospects over here. Got the Jake Holton. Happy single right there. So
Ernie
Harwell. Sergio with the Ernie Harwell ASMR. That ball talked to the fan, Jerry and Lansing there.
Something on the internet.
That foul ball was caught there by Jerry and Lansing there, and so
I talked to Lulu last night.
Dr. Lulu.
Something on the internet. I'm doing walkie talk. Anyway.
All right, this is going off the rails. It's getting towards the end of the night.
Yep.
He is the guy. Michael calls him the Godfather at ASMR. Oh man, you know what? Imagine George Kell doing ASMR. Hey everybody, this is George Kell alongside my LK line here. I can't do. I mean, George does a bad George Kell, but imagine George Kell's voice. Yeah, that would. No. Oh, all right. Let's wrap this up. Thank you for listening. There'll be a written recap of the Week 9 coming out tomorrow on TigersMLReport.com. There's an article that I've been neglecting. That I was going to talk about what's next among the next wave of prospects. With the Riley Green injury and what the Tigers might do. So there's going to be some out. So if you want to support us again, patreon.com/Tigers Medical Report, or go to our PayPal. We also have a PayPal link that you can support the link. Thank you so much for our donations this evening. Blood Right doing the Lord's work. Elton, thank you. Everybody thank you for everybody. And by the way, I also want to thank everybody for one more thing. The Tiger Medical Report podcast is we have that on we actually outranked for the first time ever the Motor City Metrics podcast. Chris and I've been doing that podcast now for 6 or 7 years. And this show we started doing a few years ago. Last year we didn't do it consistently. We've been doing it consistently this year. And as a result, we were ranked among the top 125 prospects. Well, podcasts in the baseball category on iTunes. So thank you for everybody who's been tuning in every week and checking us out on Apple Podcast. And don't forget, Sunday, July 9th is the MLB Draft Show. We'll be doing the entire first round. That includes the Tigers pick at number 37, as we'll be giving you draft coverage, wall-to-wall draft coverage the entire time. We're going to have special guests. It's going to be a fun time. And if there's going to be an outrageous pick, I get to go slash in a pool. So great night. What's up, Chris?
I just want to say, thank everybody for the donations. Because of your donations, we almost drove to Dayton today to see Eric SeaWolves.
Thank you.
Which is a 3-hour plus drive both ways. We thought we could do that. But I thought that there was a chance that he would only pitch like 2 innings. we were driving 6 hours. Sure enough, 12 pitches for SeaWolves. We would have driven 6 hours to get 12 pitches for SeaWolves, which, hey, would have been fun. But I didn't know if it was the best use of our resources. We haven't even discussed this, but I'm thinking, because there's no TV in Lake County, when the Whitecaps go to Lake County at some point this year, we may take a trip down there just to get video for you guys, because you've made it so we can.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea, because Lake County, they even had a visiting broadcast too. And Lake County was in town 2 weeks ago. They didn't bring anybody. So, and I think the guys at Lake County, we have some friends over the Cleveland Guardians prospect side of things. Justin, Pat, there's Willie over there. So those guys are doing a fantastic job. Good meet up. So have a great night, everybody. We'll talk to you Thursday. And again, don't forget, go to TigersMLBReport.com. Check out all the great content over there. And we'll see you.